Dear students, today we will discuss the forest society and colonialism. I am Pritish Acharya. I teach history at the Regional Institute of Education, Bhubaneswar. As you know, this is part of your history textbook meant for class 9. First, we will discuss the meaning of the topic. What does it mean? Forest society and colonialism, there are two terms, and first you understand the meaning. Forest society broadly refers to all those who live in and on the forest, including the plants, animals and human beings. However, here the focus is on the humans who live in and on the forest. Colonialism refers to the foreign rule in modern times. In this specific case, it is the British rule in India in the 18th, 19th and 20th century. Also, the Dutch colonialism comes in the chapter which talks about the development in Java. The topic discusses the impact of British rule broadly on the forest society, like the economy and culture. The forest of the colony, that was India, had also been greatly devastated during the British rule. The society there strongly reacted to this change which the British had brought, and at times, because of the change, the British were compelled to alter, and that would be the main focus of the topic today. That India and Java have been taken in this topic, and there are many similarities between India and Java, though there are also differences. In the sense, India was a colony under the British and Java in Indonesia under the Dutch colonialism. The period discussed is 18th, 19th and early 20th century. Colonial powers were different in India and Java, but there were many similarities so far as the forest policies were concerned, both in India and Java. There are 4 focal points you need to see in this chapter. Throughout it has been there, that what was there in the forest traditionally, how did the people live, what were their traditional rights. Then secondly, what changes were brought by the British or the colonial authorities in India, and the changes which the Dutch brought in Java, and then how did the society reacted to the changes, and finally what alterations, what changes the authorities bring after coming across the people's reaction. These are the 4 focal points along with India, as I told. The case of Java in Indonesia, where the Dutch had the colonial authorities, has been discussed in the topic to make a comparison between the 2 colonies of Asia ruled by 2 different colonial power. What is the need of this topic? As you know, it is history, and generally we talk about the historical developments. Does it come under historical development? Should we discuss the forest society or the changes in the forest society in our history section? There are so many reasons for this, discussing this. We generally feel that factories, cities, industrial and agricultural sectors have only contributed to the making of the present modern society. And in the process, we tend to ignore the contributions of other people, other societies and other economies. They matter, these so-called other people or the people whom we see as other people, they matter as much as the cities and factories do, so far as the making of the present society is concerned. the study of history cannot afford to ignore the forest society. All aspects are important in history because they all contribute to the historical change. We generally see that forest has also greatly contributed to the making of the modern society, though we feel that forest is something pre-modern, non-modern or non-civilizational, and it belongs to the bygone era. Jungly and wild are terms used to mean barbaric and unsophisticated. But see the things around you. In your own classroom, you see which are integral part of the modern life and society, and try to count how many of them are straight from the forest. Let us count: paper, desk, table, doors, windows, pencil, the color used in the clothes, cricket bat you play in the field, hockey stick, electricity produced in the thermal stations, charcoal used for the ironing of your clothes, they all have come from the forest. This means modernization cannot happen without the forest products, without the contributions of the forest society. Then we'll discuss about deforestation, and you probably know what does it mean. There is a picture here, you see that how trees are cut and the forest is deforested. It is wiped out, on a regular basis. We have a picture here, then another picture in which the bamboos are taken. Then let us understand what is deforestation and why there was deforestation during the colonial rule. Disappearance of forest is called deforestation. Man, with his zeal for industrialization, is mainly responsible for disappearance of forests or deforestation. Deforestation is also due to cultivation of crops and development of urban centers. Between 1700 and 1995, 139 lakh square kilometers of world forest was cleared for industrialization. This was 9.3% of the world's total area. In 1600 AD, only 1/6 of India's landmass was under cultivation, and now it has been extended to nearly 1/2. Why this change? Why this extension in cultivation? In the 19th century, the British considered the forest unproductive and encouraged the cultivation of commercial crops to increase the revenue of the state. That forest, as if it is useless, and forest must be brought to use, and for that agriculture must be extended by clearing the forest. This was one reason for deforestation, because the demand for food had gone up due to rise in population. Now let us understand what is commercial crop. A crop that is commercially very profitable because of its demand in a world scale. What are the examples of commercial crops? Jute, sugar, wheat, cotton, tea, coffee, and rubber. We'll see the British Navy and the coming of railways had led to great deforestation. Britain, as you know, had become a world power and commercial giant because of its navy. In the early 19th century, due to shipbuilding, navy means large ships, strong ships, and for shipbuilding, the oak forest used to supply, or the trees were taken from the oak forest in England. But when it depleted there, As an alternative, the British took the best quality timber from India for building their ships, and that led to deforestation. You know, in 1853, we saw the opening of railway tracks from Bombay to Thane in Maharashtra. Much before that, during the 1840s and 50s, in 53, it was opened, but before that, the work had started. The lines were laid. The sleepers used in the lines are from timber. Timber was also used in the making of railway coach. Charcoal was used for running the engine. All this led to large-scale deforestation. That unless you cut the trees, unless you bring trees and good quality timber, say these railway lines could not be spread because the sleepers had to be from timber. Then each mile of railway, let us see how much, say, deforestation took place because of the coming of railways. Each mile of railway required, say, between 1760 to 2000 pieces of sleepers. One matured sal tree could give 3 to 5 sleepers at best. 1 mile is 1.6 kilometer. By 1853 it started, but by 1890, India had developed some 25,000 kilometers of railway, and by 1946, before leaving India, the British had developed, say, 53,000 kilometers of railway lines. And you can calculate how many trees might have been cut for making sleepers used in the railways. You can imagine how much deforestation might have occurred due to the development of railways or coming of railways in India. It is estimated that Madras presidency, there were other 2 presidencies, Bombay presidency and say Bengal presidencies, but Madras presidency alone saw the cutting of 35,000 trees every year in the 1850s for meeting the need of railway sleepers. This shows that, say, how deforestation had been a reality, how the British had brought deforestation in the 19th and early 20th century. Now it is in this context we, say, come across another word, that is forest management. And in this context, I mention a term, Dietrich Brandis was a German botanist hired by the British government to manage the forest in India in 1864. What was the need for forest management? Because the British finally realized that unless the deforestation was checked, the forest would not be surviving. Forest would be wiped out completely. And Brandis was appointed as the Inspector General of Forest in India from 1864 to 1883 to suggest means how to manage the forest so that deforestation is checked. What he suggested? Let us see. Say, how did, say, Brandis' suggestion help in the curtailing of deforestation or not? As per Brandis' suggestions, Indian Forest Service was set up in 1864. Indian Forest Act was passed in 1865. The Act was amended in 1878 and again in 1927. The Forest Act of 1878 divided the forest into 3 categories: reserve forest, protected forest and village forest. Whereas villages could take, say, wood from the protected and village forests. Villages means people from the villages. For house building, for fuel, and also for food purpose, they were prohibited from using the products of the reserved forest. They were not even given entry into the reserve forests. And the reserve forests were the best and the most dense forests. This was Brandeis declared as forest management, that ordinary people, the people who lived near the forest, must be prevented from using the forest, the reserve forest, and the best forest was reserved, and the commercial crops must be growing because that cannot be checked. Then trees also must be cut, or should not be, say, the government should not stop cutting the trees for industrial and other purposes. After Brandeis going from India in 1883, Imperial Forest Research Institute was set up in Dehradun in 1906. Brandeis went in 1883. Until then, say, he had been advising the government, consulting with the government. After that, in 1906, the Imperial Forest Research Institute was set up in Dehradun. He also brought a new concept called scientific forestry, which we need to discuss. What was this scientific forestry? Scientific forestry meant cutting of natural forest and growing of a single species of plants for commercial and industrial use. But is it scientific? Forest means varieties of plants and trees which supplement one another. The animals survive there because of the natural conditions. They sustain and help man to sustain himself. However, if the balance is upset by man, if man is responsible for upsetting the balance, the forest is lost. The colonial rulers wanted to overuse the forest. What they brought was plantation in place of forestry. Say, forestry had to be replaced by plantation because a single species of plants had to be planted, because it had commercial, say, regions. It had a world market, and for that purpose the natural forests were, say, deforested for the sake of, say, plantation. Can it be scientific? Just you think about it. Can it be scientific? As a result, today many ecologists also question this concept, because they believe that natural forestry cannot be replaced by, say, plantations, and plantations cannot be called forestry. Deforestation greatly affected the people. The people who lived in the forest, on the forest, now they were greatly affected after the government decided to, say, have three categories of forest, and the best forest was kept as reserve forest, and the people were prevented from using it. People used forest products for fuel, fodder, food, and house building. You all know. Even for the brush in the village, they take a twig from the, say, tree, and that is available in the forest. The restrictions imposed by the forest department put them in great hardships. Where would they take their cattle for grazing? How would they collect the fuel for their home consumption? These were now new rules the British brought, the colonial government brought, so that the people are prevented from using the forest, so that forest is, say, intact. But the real problem was in the commercial use, or the, say, deforestation for industrial and other uses. Deforestation affected the people in great way. the government abolished their age-old practice of shifting cultivation. Already, people had a tradition of shifting cultivation, and this shifting cultivation, which in Odisha we call jhum cultivation. Outside in other parts of India also there are different names. Shifting cultivation means clearing a patch of forest and cultivating it till the land loses its fertility. The peasant clears another patch and shifts the cultivation there. The former patch could be left to grow as part of forest. Societies in Asia, Africa and South America practiced it since ancient times. The government banned it because of the fear of deforestation and forest burning. Because it was feared that when the people say clear the forest, they burn the forest, and say the area which is burned say spreads to the entire forest, and as a result it becomes very dangerous and shifting cultivation must be stopped. But the other say issue involved in the shifting cultivation was that people had been doing it for say thousands of years. Now how can it stop just by the decision of the government? Various terms used to mean shifting cultivation. Lading in Southeast Asia, milpa in Central America, these are the terms used to mean shifting cultivation. Chitemene or tevi in Africa, chena in Sri Lanka. Then if you come to India, then there are so many terms used to mean shifting cultivation. Dia, Penda, Bevar, Nevad, Jhum, Podu, Khandar and Kumri. These are the terms used for say meaning shifting cultivation. When you have so many terms for this shifting cultivation, what does it indicate? Every community has a local term for it. Doesn't it indicate its wide prevalence? That it had been there and now just because of the decision it cannot be stopped. The people had to be given alternatives to stop shifting cultivation. When shifting cultivation was forcibly stopped, there was reaction from the people. Here we have a scene of shifting cultivation which is known as jhum cultivation in parts of India. Then let us see that how the hunting rights had also say created new problems in the forest society. As you know that people who live near the village, near the forest and in the forest, what they do? They used to go to the forest or jungle for hunting. Their targets were deer, poultries or birds at best. They don't go for big animals because it is difficult, it is dangerous to kill a big animal like tiger. It was a part of their social and community life. There are many communities in India, say tribal communities, who feel that say once in a year they should go for such hunting. Man began as a hunter and after that only he has become an agriculturalist. So how can they leave this hunting? But this hunting had not been affecting the jungle. Otherwise, by 16th or 17th century, the jungle might have been wiped out or all the big animals might have been killed in the process. Hunting of the people, hunting by the people, say villagers had been there, but the big animals also survived. But now, after the colonial intervention, after the coming of the British, what happened? After the imposition of the Forest Act and restrictions, their hunting was stopped. They were prevented. They were not allowed for hunting. At the same time, this was one scene. Another scene was that killing of big animals like tiger, leopard and wolf. Say they were encouraged. And who used to do it? The princess, the British officials, high officials, and they continued unabated without any stop. Big animals were seen as something hostile to civilization and modernity, as if, say tiger or living a tiger in a jungle means something a very barbarian or uncivilizational or very dangerous thing, and it is quite away from a modern situation. As a result, to bring civility, to bring modernity, they thought that such wild animals, big animals, must be killed, must be wiped out. Say there was encouragement for killing them in the name of big game and big sport. You see the term used for big game, as if it's a game. Killing a tiger is a game, is a sport. It is estimated that over 80,000 tigers, 150,000 leopards and 200,000 wolves had been killed in India between 1875 and 1925, just in 50 years' time. Say, such a big number of big animals, wild animals had been killed. Wolves, tigers and leopards. The Maharaja of Sarguja in modern Chhattisgarh, Sri Ramanuj Saran Singhdeo, had killed some 1157 tigers and 2000 leopards by 1957. There was a British officer called Jor Yule who had killed 400 tigers, and they were very proud of killing these big animals. Here is this Maharaja Ramanuj Saran Singhdeo from Sarguja in modern Chhattisgarh, who claimed to have killed some 1157 tigers, 2000 leopards by 1957. So ordinary people, what after the imposition of these new rules, what we see? That killing of these big animals, they were encouraged. Tigers, leopards, wolves, that was encouraged. And a term like sport, game was used to kill them. And ordinary people were punished for hunting small animals. And in the process, their age-old practice of hunting had been banned. Obviously, this led people to react, to protest. The killing of big animals led to near extinction of those animals. Today we hear about this tiger project, Project Tiger. And Project Tiger means save the animal. You might have seen it in different TV programs also, how we are careful of saving this animal. But there was a time when mercilessly, and the government used to give support. Also, the people who used to kill, they were very proud of killing these big animals. What was the net result? That killing these tigers and wolves and then leopards was like killing the security guard of the forest. Just think about it, how they were security guards. If there is a tiger in the jungle, then people will be scared to overuse the jungle or go to the jungle, and in the process jungle was protected, forest was protected. When people knew that it does not have any animal or dangerous animal or wild animal, then without fear they would go and take away the forest products for commercial use. The deforestation or the coming of the say new rules, forest rules, also led to say many other problems. For example, that traditionally there were people living near the forest, say who supplied forest products to the society outside, and this supplemented their income. And also we need, say for example, some medicines we need from the forest. And who would supply? The people who live near the forest or in the forest. For domestic needs, we depend on these forest products. Banjaras were such a community. They traded hides, horns, silk cocoons, ivory, bamboo, spices, grasses, gums and resins. There are other communities as well. Banjaras were one community. Koraba, Karacha, Yarakula. In Madras Presidency, they were also engaged in the trade of forest products. They were traditional people who did not make a big earning by selling the forest products because there was a need, because others wanted it for medicinal purpose, also for say other domestic purpose. They wanted, they demanded, and then the people supplied. There was not much commerce or big profit involved in the sale and say purchase of these forest products before the coming of the colonial rule. However, now after the coming of the say colonial rule, these traditional and the forest rules, what we find? That these traditional trading communities near the forest lost their job because they were not allowed to go to into the forest. So far we have discussed how the British intervention had greatly affected the forest and the forest communities, the people who live in and around the forest, the plants which had been growing in the forest, the animals which had been living in the forest, they all had been greatly affected by the colonial changes. And the people, because the changes were not acceptable, they had reacted, which could be seen in the form of forest revolts, which we will be discussing later on.